Good morning, boys and girls. It's Wednesday, April 22nd, and a special day today. Today is National Earth Day. That's right. For 50 years now, we have celebrated Earth Day on April 22nd. In your learning targets today, we will have a Zoom meeting at 11:30 this morning, starting with Mrs. Stonick, so everyone join on with her. And just like last week, I'll come in a little bit later. Before the meeting, I'd like for you to look at P7 in IXL. You're going to identify an equivalent fraction. I'll show you that lesson today. In Mystery Science, there's a video on erosion. The question, will a mountain last forever? And in EPIC, there is another book on erosion I'd like for you to read today titled, How Do Water and Wind Change Rock? All right, let's get started with our lesson today, trying to find an equivalent fraction. Which fraction is equivalent to 5/6? Well, today I'm going to show you one last time using the strategy of a picture. Pictures are always great, however, they take a little bit of time, and there's a mathematical equation we can do to speed up the process. But for this case, let's take a look at 5/6. Here you can see in this bar I have shaded 5 out of 6 parts. Down below, I drew another picture showing twelfths, and I have shaded 10 of those twelfths. And you can see here by the shading, this is exactly the same amount. However, twelfths are smaller pieces, so it takes 10 of those to make the same amount as 5/6. So 5/6 is equivalent to 10 twelfths. So I wrote the equation out, 5/6 equals 10 twelfths. If you look at your sixths here, and how they turned into twelfths, we actually doubled the amount of pieces. So mathematically, we would take the 6 pieces we originally had and double that by timesing by 2. That would make 12 new pieces. Now, in order to keep things equivalent, we have those 5 original pieces. Because we doubled the denominator, the numerator was now doubled to 10 parts. And you can count 10 parts out of 12 is equal to 5 parts out of 6. So to review, one way we can make an equivalent fraction is take a fraction like 5/6 and times the numerator and denominator by 2, and you would find 10 twelfths is equivalent. Next question, which fraction is equivalent to 3 twelfths? 3 twelfths is equivalent to 1/4. Now, just as we multiply to make an equivalent fraction, we can also divide to make an equivalent fraction. In this example, 3 and 12 are both multiples of 3. And since they are both multiples of 3, 3 is a great choice that I can divide the 12 by 3 and create 4 parts as a denominator. Keeping things equivalent and equal, I must do the same with the numerator, dividing that by 3. 3 divided by 3 would produce 1 as a new numerator. So 3 twelfths is equivalent to 1/4. You would select this one. Which fraction is equivalent to 8 tenths? Well, just as I mentioned, I can times the numerator and the denominator by 2. That means I'm doubling the amount of pieces. That would produce 16 twentieths. But as you can see in my choices, 16 twentieths is not an option. So what else can I do? If I cannot multiply by 2 or 3 or 4 to find an equivalent fraction in my choices, I can also notice that I can divide. Here's how you know when you can divide. 8 and 10, the numerator and the denominator both share a common multiple. That common multiple that they both share is the multiple of 2. In other words, if I count by 2, I'm going to land on 8, and if I count by 2, I'm going to land on 10. So in this case, because they share a common multiple of 2, I can actually divide by 2. And 8 divided by 2 is 4, and then I want to keep things equal and divide the denominator by 2, and that would be 5. Now, of course, 4/5 is equivalent to 8 tenths. Fifths are bigger pieces than tenths, so instead of doubling the amount, I cut that amount in half. It went from 10 pieces to 5 pieces. But 8 tenths is equivalent to 4/5. Which fractions are equivalent to 5/6? Again, I can multiply and always start with checking there. Can I multiply by 2? Sure. 5 times 2 would produce a 10. 6 times 2 would produce a 12. I can do this with any multiplier. I could multiply the amount of pieces by 3 and still produce an equivalent fraction. That would produce a 15 and an 18. But those pieces became a lot smaller. 18ths are smaller than 12ths. And as you see in my choices, 10 twelfths are the smallest amount of pieces. Twelfths are the smallest pieces in all my choices. So instead of keeping on with multiplying, can I divide? In this case, I cannot divide because 5 and 6 do not share a common multiple other than 1. And watch what happens when you divide by 1. 5/6, if you chose to divide by 1, you're going to end up having the same exact fraction. 5 divided by 1 is 5, and 6 divided by 1 is 6. That's not really an equivalent fraction. That's the exact same fraction, so we can't count that. Okay, so in this case, I can multiply by 2, and the hint, there may be more than one. Well, in this case, there's only one. 10 twelfths is equivalent to 5/6. I want to make another equivalent fraction to 1/4. So I'm asking myself, can I multiply? Always. Yes, I can always multiply a fraction with its numerator and denominator and create an equivalent fraction. But can I divide in this case? So my question, do this numerator and denominator share a common multiple? They don't. The only common multiple they share is 1. So in this case, I'm going to have to multiply in order to make an equivalent fraction. I'm going to choose to multiply by 2 again. 1 times 2 is 2, and 4 times 2 is 8. So I can see that I have one choice up there. Okay. If I were to do this again, 1/4, let's multiply by 3 this time. Remember, you can multiply by any number to make an equivalent fraction. So 1 times 3 is 3. 4 times 3 is 12. I have 3/12, which is equivalent to 1/4, so there's another choice. One other strategy you can use, and I've taught this, that cross-multiplying strategy. If you're going to try to find a fraction that's equivalent to 2/4, well, you'd have to check each one of your choices just to verify, is that equivalent to 2/4? Well, let's look at 4/6. Cross-multiplying, I would do 4 times 4 is 16, and 6 times 2 is 12. 12 and 16 are not equal, therefore those are not equivalent fractions. We can do the same thing again with 2/8. Let's compare 2/4 to 2/8. 4 times 2 is 8, and 8 times 2 is 16. 16 and 8 are also not equivalent, so we can cross that one out too. Still looking for an equivalent fraction to 2/4. Let's check 4/8. And if I cross multiplied, 4 times 4 is 16, and 8 times 2 is 16. Hey, 16 and 16 are equivalent, therefore 2/4 is equivalent to 4/8. Last one I can check is 3/4. If I check 3/4, is it equivalent to 2/4? I would cross multiply. 4 times 3 is 12. 4 times 2 is 8. 8 and 12 are not equivalent, so we can cross that one out. The only one that is equivalent to 2/4 in this list of choices is 4/8. And most of you probably saw already that 2/4 and 4/8 are both equivalent to the fraction 1/2. Not that that was a choice, but if you didn't see that, it's equivalent to 1/2 just as well. All right, next in your targets would be to watch another video on erosion. If you did not get through your iTunes U course on Monday, please go to the erosion section and watch a couple videos, read a couple pieces of information. What is erosion? That would help you understand this video a little bit better by Mystery Doug. Will a mountain last forever? So remember, as you're watching the video, hit play, hit the advance button, hit play again, and there will be an experiment that Doug shows you at the end. That experiment will be demonstrated by me as well on your Friday science video, okay? Then when you get to Epic, this is the book I'd like for you to read. It's called How Do Water and Wind Change Rock? Yeah, water and wind can change rock, and we're going to show that. That's a process called weathering. And weathering and erosion are both ways that the earth goes through changes. And so by reading this book, you're going to find that out. All right, so once again, those are your targets today on April 22nd, Earth Day. Hopefully we see you at your Zoom meeting at 11:30, okay? Make it a great day, everyone. Take care.